Okay, so we now want to start the sewing proper. Now, remember when we said we're making a button down shirt, it requires a back yoke, but in the course of this video, I'll not be using a back yoke. Our major focus, our major target is how to achieve that notch collar, and both left and right relax. That is our major target. So now, let's begin with this. This is our back panel. I want to do the join. Let's start with the joining. This is our back panel. This is our back panel. The wrong side facing you, take the wrong side facing you. Then you pick up the front panel, half of it. This is the front panel, half of it. Now, what to do quickly? Good side to the good side. So you go to your sewing machine, you sew the shoulder, and you flip this over. Then you pick up the second part. Take note. Good side facing each other. Then you sew this shoulder. But remember, while we're cutting, we folded the back on top of the front with ½ inch. So it is a ½ inch that we'll be sewing. So we'll sew this and also flip this over. Take note, good side to the good side. So let's do that, and making sure that the armholes are also aligned. So let's do that now. Okay, so I'm sewing the ½ inch at the shoulder point. All right. Okay, so this is the second part. So you pick up your front panel, shoulder to shoulder shown, and you sew ½ inch. Okay, so we're through with that. Okay, so like I said, we'll flip this over to the good side. Remember, if you want to use your yoke, use. Alright, so I've done the joining of both sides. I've done the joining. Now this is our neck circumference. So our major focus will be this point. Okay, so what I'll quickly do, pay attention now. I'll pick this. Now remember, this was the point of the notch for the 4-inch mark. This is the point of the notch. Remember, I said we removed 4 inch, so I quickly put the notch there. So I'll flip this backward. Sorry, I'm taking this to the good side. Remember, this is the good side. So I'm folding this backward from the point. Okay, so we are taking this, folding it to the good side. All right, bringing the two. This is to remember the two. This is the two front panel. That is the point of the notch there. So now you fold this. You fold this as shown. You fold this as shown. Take you're folding this as shown. So we now put another notch again. Now remember, this is from the point of the notch. Let me take it again. Let me just do it at one part so you see it clearly. Now, from this point of the notch, I'm taking this backward. This is one part alone, so you see it clearly. So I'm taking this as shown from the point of the notch. Then I'm folding again from this point of the notch here, this point here. You fold again at least 1½ inch, and you put a notch. So you have this length, say 1½ inch, and you put a notch. So you do the same thing for the other parts. Take note. So from this first notch that we did, this is the first 4-inch notch. So we folded again at least 1½ inch. Then you put a notch there. So you do this for this other second part. So a recap with this, from this point at the first notch for the 4-inch. So this is the recap of the second one. Now from the point of the notch, the first one, remember this is the first notch of the 4-inch mark while cutting. So from here, I'm folding 1½ inch again, 1½ inch. Then you put your notch there. All right, so we have our second notch. Now it is from this second notch that we'll take our next circumference. Take it from the second notch. From the second notch, that is where we'll take our neck circumference. Okay, so it is from this point of the second notch. Remember, it is from this second notch that you now take your neck circumference from this second notch that we did. This is the main body attached to the back panel, the front panel attached to the back panel. So it is from this second notch, this second one we did, that you now take your neck circumference. So I'll measure from here. So let's quickly take our neck circumference from this point here. So you place your tape here to know our neck circumference we have there. So trying to measure what we have there. So you can see there we have 15. Okay, this is 7 3/4. I'll be cutting 7 3/4. Let me take it again from the second notch. Take note, we're doing this from this second notch that we did. So from here, measure down, 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 down. Okay, sorry, 7 1/4. We have 7 1/4. All right, so the collar will be fixing, the notch collar will be fixing will be 7 1/4. Take note, that is 14 and half. 14 and half. So I'll quickly cut the cloth gums. I'll be using this thick cloth gum, stays very thick. Now the length is 7.5 inch. That is what I'll be working with. Sorry, 14.5 inch. 14.5 inch. Okay, so this is 14.5 inches. So I'll be cutting from here. Now the width I'm working with, depending on how wide you want your notch collar to be, depending on how wide. You can use 3, you can use 3.5, you can use 2, depending on how you want it. But in this case, I'm using 3 inch. So I'm cutting 3 inches by 14.5 inches. So this will serve as our notch collar. We'll be using this to fix our notch collar. This is strong cloth gums. So I'll quickly get the piece of fabric I want to use. Then we'll now gum this as shown. We'll gum this just the way we gum your normal collar. So iron this down. Iron this down. Okay, when you're through gumming it on the piece of fabric, you fold this edge just the same way you do your normal. You fold this edge and you iron this down as well. Okay, when you're through with this point, you take it backward as shown. Take it backward, then you iron this down as well. Okay, when you're through, you've sewed this part, this folded part. You sew it quickly as shown. You're sewing this. Okay, then you turn this to the back as shown. Then we sew this point straight. Stop there, and you sew the other part as well. So when you're through, you turn this just the way you do your normal collar. Then we iron this neatly. Okay, so at this stage, we now want to fix our notch collar. This is the point of emphasis in the video here. So to fix our notch collar, this is the turning I've done. At least you leave at least a 1/4 inch as shown. Now this is a good part. You leave at least a 1/4 inch as shown, which is this. That is what you use to sew. Now this is a button down shirt. Now we have 2 notches there. This one is the first notch we did while cutting, which is 4 inch. So from here to here was 4 inch. So you fold it exactly at that point. Fold it exactly at the first notch. Then you will sew. I'm sewing just a 1/4 inch. So then while sewing, you get to the second notch. This is the second notch there. I don't know if you can see it clearly. At the point of the second notch, you're now fixing your notch collar. That is the name, notch collar. Fixing from the point of the second notch, fixing that point there. Then you continue your sewing. While sewing, you make sure you capture this. Make sure you capture this point. You capture. Okay, so you sew this down, making sure the 3 are equal. Sew this down. Sew this down. So we'll stop there where this one stops. We'll stop there for now. So when you stop at that point, you move over to this other part as well from the back. Remember your first notch, you fold it as shown from the first notch. Then you sew again at least a 1/4 inch. You sew again. Sew down. Then when you get to the first, look at the notch point. Then when you get to that notch point, you bring in your notch collar. fixing your notch collar at that point, fixing from that point where the notch is, the second notch is, then you continue your sewing. Make sure sewing the 3 together. Remember there are 3 pieces, 1, 2, 3. Sew the 3 together. Then you sew and meet up to the first point that you've sewed already. Okay, when you get to this point where the first, this you push. Remember at this point we folded in and we sewed. So you push this out. Take when you push this out. When you get to the point where this first one stopped, the first notch, you push that out to have a neat finishing. So you push that out and you continue to sew down to the other part. Okay, so when you're through sewing, you quickly put this, quickly do this. So we now turn this to the good side. So we turn this. So we now turn this. As you can see, our notch collar is almost set. Turn this to the good side. Turn this. Alright, now we now top stitch from this point of this notch here. From this point here, we now top stitch. Exactly at that point, we are sewing it round. So watch carefully. A top stitching. Now when you get to this point here, take a look. When you get to this point where this stopped, you put a notch there. You quickly put a notch. As you can see, put a notch from that point where this stopped. This is the excess of the 4-inch that we folded, the excess. Then you take this other part. Look, I've done the notch. Then you take this other part inside and you continue your sewing as shown. You take this other part inside, just the way you fix your normal collar inside. Continue your sewing. So you sew this collar round. You do this round. Same thing, when you get to this point, you put a notch there, then you fix it in, then you press this other side to this way. When you get to this point, you sew, remember, you sew the collar around. This is how to fix your notch collar. Alright, so we're through with this. Now, the final step you do is, if you have your weaving machine now, this is the excess, the 4-inch excess that we did. You weave this round, then you also weave this round. Then when you're through with that, remember there was an overlapping, so you adjust this. Remember one side goes for your buttonhole and one side goes for your button, so you adjust this. And remember we said there is an overlapping of 1/2 inch. One part, the left overlaps the right at least 1/2 inch, so you do that. So by the time you do that, then take a look at this. So I'll quickly adjust this. So you have your okay. So as you can see, we've arrived at this. So this is how to fix our notch collar. So you see that these parts, they're all relaxed along with your collar. So the next thing you'll be doing when you're through with this, remember we said there's an overlapping here. So you will make sure you also adjust the overlap in 1/2 inch. Then you get your pin and you pin this down. Then when you're through with the pinning, you make sure you adjust both sides, your sleeve, everything. Then you now fix your sleeve. Every other way, you just do it in form of your normal button down shirt. So this is how to sew your button down shirt with a notch collar. Once again, you're watching PJ Collection Clothing Online.